hillside, far hillside is over there.
This part along here, like where we are here at the moment.
In winning the national crown, Lee has become the youngest competitor to win the Open title. It may also be ratified that Lee is the youngest winner of a major contest worldwide. His first win was in the weight category of 65 to 75 kilograms, and then it was on to the final against all weight division winners. And after the pose-off, the weight.
Nerve-wracking. You're just waiting to always just praying to hear your number and praying to hear your name all the time, so you're just wondering whether it's going to be you.
And you told me just a little bit earlier that you didn't specifically hear your number called out when they'd made the announcement.
No, because my family was being too noisy up the back, so they always yell and scream, and all I heard was the last bit of my name, and I wasn't sure whether they said the runner-up or the winner, so I was pretty dumbfounded when they gave me the trophy.
For his victory, Lee will now fly to Tucson, Arizona for the Mr. Universe competition early next month, something that he's looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to the experience of going over there and just learning from the Americans and find out what they do in contest preparation, and that the experience is going to be worth the trip. And that.
Still in Queensland, and the Merewether Surfboard Riders Club created history by taking out their third consecutive National Surf League Championship and retaining their claim to be the #1 surfboard club in the land. Merewether defeated Cronulla in the semi-final and then faced Snapper Rocks in the showdown for the crown. Marcus Brabant, Shane Powell, Matt Hoy, Nicky Wood and Simon Law had surfed brilliantly to make the final, and in the tag team decider, Nicky Wood set the scene with some clever manoeuvres. With every second precious to the outcome, it was left to Simon Law to steer the champions to victory. Law blitzed the Durambar Gold Coast waves to catch 4 rides in only 4 minutes. This enabled Merewether to grab enough points to snatch the title. The final score, Merewether 117, Snapper Rocks 108.
Year 12 teachers at Booragul High were among the first in the Hunter to refuse to work extra periods to cover for absent staff. From today, they'll be stood down for the length of the class they refuse to take. They will then return to normal classes, reinstated on full pay. The situation is a far cry from yesterday's angry decision by teachers to all stop work whenever any one of their number was ordered to cover an extra period.
Well, the tactic yesterday, which was the proper tactic at that time, on holding a stop work whenever an extra was given out, means that you will have continuous strikes at our high schools. The effect of that will be, of course, that all classes will remain untaught. This way is the class which is being given out as the extra, which will remain untaught, and normal lessons will proceed for the other years.
Most high schools followed Booragul's lead, but others at Raymond Terrace and Nelson Bay decided children couldn't be properly supervised and sent them home. Most caught early buses, but some were stranded, much to the anger of parents who arranged alternative transport.
I'm very annoyed because I've had to get my sister-in-law to come over to pick my daughter up for me. And I've been behind the teachers. If they'd been given a warning and we were said, well, the next 2 days this could happen, that would have been fine. But just to do it instantly like this, I disagree, and I will not back them again.
No, it's unfair, you know. Me and my friend, we had permission off the...
In other schools, there were no staff shortages to cover and no disruption to classes. The Department of Education first proposed that Year 12 teachers with time on their hands at the end of the year could cover for absent staff almost a decade ago. Since then, it's been an ongoing source of industrial conflict and is now due to be heard by a full bench of the Arbitration Commission. The Education Department says the system saves labour. The Teachers Federation says an English teacher can't take a woodwork class.
Now that's the problem with Meadowbank extras. They are given to teachers who are not trained in the subject area, and the effect is the children in those classes don't get taught anyway.
Teacher delegates are holding talks this evening. At this stage, most high schools are advising children to attend classes tomorrow, even if they can't say what the effects of any industrial unrest will be.
Mr Langton claimed the major Tangara contractor, Gninnen at Broadmeadow, is experiencing difficulty in paying its subcontractors. He said some accounts to subcontractors on this project date back several months, and State Rail is endeavouring to balance its books by paying its accounts late. The Shadow Transport Minister says the railway's heavy-handed attitude is putting at risk hundreds of jobs in private transport-related industries. Mr Langton said the authority is attempting to put pressure on the Tangara builder in an endeavour to renegotiate parts of the contract. He called on Transport Minister Baird to ensure that State Rail meets all of its legal and ethical contractual obligations on the Tangara project. Mr Baird was unavailable for comment late today, while Gninnen General Manager John Fitzgerald was returning to Newcastle from a business trip to Canberra.
Professor Hartley had a very high view of his own ability and his own distinction and of the effect that his ideas would have on changing the world. He never achieved that. He was a fairly obscure professor in a small university, and he really could see toward the end of his life that if his name was going to be remembered by the world, it would have to be by one extraordinary act.
That extraordinary act was to bequeath to Newcastle University shares valued at nearly $1.5 million to be used to send a graduate of French to Paris each year. However, the university is seeking a variation of Professor Kilver Hartley's will.
There really is too much money available simply to carry out Professor Hartley's wishes. Certainly the university wants to carry out his wishes, but it will also seek permission to use what remains of the fund's income to enable other students of French to benefit, as we think Professor Hartley would also have wished.
Professor Ken Dutton took over as head of the French department when Professor Hartley retired in 1968. He perhaps best knows of the eccentric professor's obsession.
Well, he lived in very great modesty, I suppose, is the only thing one could say. He seems to have had very few, if any, possessions. I suspect that he had sold what still remained to him to buy more shares to leave to the university. And in fact, in his room at the time when he died, there was just really a bed, a bookcase, a table and chair, and one or two items of clothing, and that's all he seems to have left himself with.
Kilver Hartley spent the last 20 years of his life as a hermit, consumed with a desire to leave money to Newcastle University.
Initially, there are 200 video titles available free of charge on a wide range of subjects and of interest to all ages. They are identified by the usual S symbol associated with television programs containing captions. That is, different colours for different actors and cues about sound effects and music, etc. The difference with these tapes is that no extra equipment other than a normal VHS player is required.
We've had the support of the community and the government, funding and commitment from the libraries to support the project by putting videos in their libraries where people can get to them.
While the collection is housed in the Central Library in Lehman Street, your local suburban branch library can arrange to get any particular video title you require.
All they'd really need to do is visit their nearest branch library and make a request with the staff servicing that particular branch.
Yeah.
And
well, how will they know what's available? How
we have a catalogue which will be available in every branch, so people can make selections from that catalogue, choose the title that interests them, and the request will be forwarded on in, and then we'd return the video out to that particular branch.
Representatives from Better Hearing Australia were thrilled with today's launch, saying it marks another milestone in recognition of the problems facing the deaf.
The imported 7-year-old Almarad is the early favourite from the Kiwi Horlicks and the Queenslander Vo Rogue. Vitalic, Empire Rose and Our Westminster are next in line. From 21 nominations for the WS Cox Plate, last week's Caulfield Cup winner Cole Diesel could not get a place in the field of 14.
Cole Diesel in front. Cole Diesel has won the Foster's Caulfield Cup.
But the 4-year-old grey may still get a run, as the threat of rain could force out 2 other runners who prefer to race on top of the ground. That includes Melbourne Cup winner Empire Rose and Vic Rail's popular campaigner Vo Rogue, who was scratched on race morning last year because of rain-affected conditions. Almerad, the aged chestnut trained by Colin Hayes, is the early favourite following cracking wins in the Underwood and Caulfield Stakes. Although the runner-up in the ladder, the 4-year-old Vitalik, may turn the tables with Gavin Duffy aboard.
The leader, Vitalik, is making a race of it. Almerad just in front. He's won by...
Gary Harley feels that the trifecta on this year's Cox Plate will be 1, 7 and 14, Almerad to beat last year's runner-up Horlicks, and the exciting 3-year-old Tristan for third. The Cox Plate's the first leg of the daily double, and of course Gary's gone for Almerad, and in the second leg, number 2, Narbota, an interesting selection by the big fella. Rosehill trained Triskay should maintain her unbeaten run when she steps out in tomorrow's Silver Slipper Stakes on her home course. The speedy filly tackles a smart field, but has been most impressive in her 2 starts to date. So in the slipper, Triskay to beat Bounce Again and Strong's Hope, and for the daily double at Rosehill tomorrow, Livewire Lady in the first leg and Investor in the second leg. They race at Beaumont Park tomorrow, and in the trifecta on race 10, Gary Harley likes Petal Appeal to win from Hill Flash and Miss Paurine, and in the daily double on races 9 and 10, try Lucky Escape in the first leg and Petal Appeal in the second. The Newcastle Trotting Club will host their second meeting at the new International Paceway at Broadmeadow tomorrow night, and in the daily double, Gary likes Quite a Show in the first leg and Dave's Pride in the second, while for the trifecta, 3, 10 and 7, Dave's Pride to beat Fortune Maker and Flying in Style.
The second day of round 2 is scheduled in the NIB District Cricket Competition, with sides batting needing to make plenty of runs. Waratah chasing 222, while City have a big job to overhaul Lambton. Stockton and University will have to bat well to get on top of Merewether and Southern Lakes respectively, while Charlestown and Wallsend are in a strong position to push for a win. In City and Suburban Cricket tomorrow, Shortland Electricity play Hotel Delaney, Hescon Finance do battle with Phoenix, Tech College play Cardiff Workers, and Elliott's Lambton clash with Sunnyside.
This is Newcastle through the lens of a press photographer. Ron Morrison joined the Newcastle Herald as a cadet in 1949. Since then he has amassed more than 30,000 negatives and prints. This exhibition captures Newcastle and its people up until 1974, but it is only a glimpse of Newcastle's changing face. Mr. Morrison has also released a book called Newcastle Scene, a collection of 320 photos of the past, like the old Stockton Punt or the 1968 floods in Raymond Terrace, NBN's first test transmission in 1962, or this Hunter Valley miner resting after an unsuccessful attempt to save 2 of his workmates trapped under a mountain of coal. There's also the lighter side of life. This bus stop in Hunter Street was the only dry spot for a conversation, and in 1961, practicing the newest dance craze, the twist.
The Hunter Area Health Service has big plans for the hospitals under its control. It wants to rationalise operations and create more specialist units. The proposed changes are documented in a report from the Area Health Service sent to hospitals for comment and not welcomed by Wallsend hospital staff.
This strategic plan has come out with no involvement, not even from our own hospital executive. They knew nothing about its drafting until it was landed on their desk.
The report essentially suggests Wallsend Hospital change from a general facility to specialise in geriatric medicine. 30 of its present 60 surgical beds would be transferred to the John Hunter Hospital at Rankin Park. While the plan may be very reasonable in a holistic sense, it doesn't take into account the very strong public feelings associated with Wallsend Hospital. This is one of a handful of institutions set up in the coalfields area, largely through miners' subscriptions, and the people around here equate the changes with an attack on their heritage.
The government didn't build this hospital in the first instance, it was the working class. And that's what we've got to do, we've got to fight together, the same as we did in the days when the hospital was first started.
Many residents turned up this afternoon to a public meeting called by local members John Price and John Mills to discuss the report. Explanations by members of the Area Health Service Board fell on deaf ears. The meeting passed a resolution to fight the proposed changes. The hospital administrators have 2 days left to reply to the report, which the Area Health Board wishes to implement before the end of the year.
Barry Albert is home with his family today, only too aware of how close he came to losing not only his $40,000 trawler, but also his life. Another trawler rescued him and crewman Trevor Brown last night after his vessel, the Leanne Joy, struck a submerged object and sank 4 miles off Newcastle. The trawler went down in full view of the crew of the bulk carrier Nova Cosmos. That vessel alerted others that 2 men were in the water clinging to an icebox. However, Barry says the captain had a moral obligation to do more for a mariner in distress.
And we were in the water for an hour, and the Cosmos kept signalling to us with an Aldous light, which was undecipherable, and blasting horn, letting him know that help, more or less let us know that help was on its way. But what I can't understand, they made no attempt to lower a lifeboat. You know, they were standing out in the wings of the bridge, watching the whole procedure.
What were your feelings at that time?
Well, I just didn't know what to think.
Both men were treated for mild hypothermia upon rescue. Mr. Albert is also being treated for an existing heart condition. The intruder entered the back door of Leanne's Carrington home at about 12:45 on the morning of January the 2nd. Apart from a back door light, the house was in darkness. 22-year-old Leanne asleep. She awoke to see a masked man standing over her bed. He pounced as she tried to flee. For 15 desperate minutes, she fought her attacker, who wrapped her head in a bedspread and punched her repeatedly in the face. Overcoming her terror, Leanne attempted to tear off the rapist's balaclava, leading to more violence. Finally, half suffocated, she submitted to the assailant, pleading only that he didn't hurt her infant son and daughter, still asleep in adjoining rooms. Detectives handling the case say she had every reason to fear for her life.
It was an exceedingly vicious and premeditated attack in which this girl could easily have been killed, and we feel this person needs to be caught for the protection of the community as a whole.
Do you think there's any reason to feel that this is more than just a random attack?
Yes, certainly. Due to the conversation that the offender had with the victim at the time of the attack, it showed that he was a local with local knowledge and knew of her. The victim actually worked at Carrington, so it's quite possible that she knew the offender either by sight or as an acquaintance.
Despite her ordeal, Leanne was able to give police valuable details about her attacker. Firstly, and most importantly, he appears to have lost a large quantity of blood during the incident. Police believe this is a result of a wound reopening during the struggle. Secondly, he smelt strongly of alcohol, and police again believe he'd been drinking with friends before he came to this address. Police are convinced that the attacker didn't run far. They believe he's in the neighbourhood and is probably well known. The man they're looking for is 176 centimetres tall, of medium build with a slim waist. He was wearing a black balaclava, a dark woolen jumper, dark jeans and shoes similar to Dunlop volleys. Leanne also told police he had large roughened hands like those of an industrial worker or seaman. If you can help police, call the Crime Stoppers hotline on 008 422 199. Police will pay cash rewards of up to $1,000 for information leading to an arrest. If you're afraid to leave your name, they'll issue you with a secret code number which will be only known to you. A reward can be collected by quoting that number to police after the arrest. The number to call again is 008 422 199. Police are standing by to take your call now.
John Farnham has become the heartthrob for thousands of Australian teenagers, and the chance to see The Voice in Newcastle has attracted just that, thousands. Promoters have decided the concert will be staged in a giant tent on the grounds of the ISC. No seating will be provided for the audience and will be up to the individual whether they stand up or sit down. A fact that has North Belmont father and son Mick Senior and Junior Reckenberg worried.
If they were genuinely seated, which he could afford to do, it wouldn't take much more off the profit of the show. All the young ones seated, they would be a hell of a lot safer than what they're going to be standing down around the legs of adults.
What sort of problems could you see happening then?
Well, I could see it happening if, we hope it doesn't, but if something does break, someone screams fire or something else, then I can see dozens of little kiddies being trampled to death.
The Theatre and Public Halls Act states that at least 5 exits must be provided for 1,000 people, and another exit per 450 after that, causing speculation that the tent would have to be completely open-sided, rain, hail or shine. Promoter Peter Anderson says seats only provide a further safety risk.
If you've been to the Entertainment Centre in Sydney, you'd be aware that the minute that the act comes on stage, everybody stands up. So if we put seating in there, then we're going to have people standing on the seats. It's individual seating, they're going to be knocking it over and people not being able to see and perhaps doing injury to some of the younger people that are going to be there in the audience at the time. There will be adequate security to ensure people's safety on the evening. And certainly we would be looking for any problems, but we're not envisaging any problems. People aren't allowed to take alcohol in there. It'll be alcohol-free environment within the tent.
The announcement of around $24 million to redevelop the two hospitals was warmly welcomed by both medical and political figures. The official opening of the library and unveiling of a model of the new-look James Fletcher Hospital are just the beginning of improvements which will offer a much better service for mental health patients in the Hunter.
The key thing that we're keen to see is, first of all, that the physical standard of the services is improved, and secondly, that we provide the sort of balance in mental health services that perhaps hasn't been there over the last few years. You've got to have a range of services extending from community services through to hospital-based services, and that's what we're keen to provide.
The historic James Fletcher Hospital, formerly the Hunter Hospital, will also enjoy restoration to its former glory as one of Newcastle's most important historical sites. Built in 1804 as a government farm, it went on to become a military barracks and then a girls' reformatory, a move that shocked Newcastle residents back in the 1860s. After serious riots, the girls were transferred to Sydney and the buildings were converted to a hospital in 1871. The work is part of a $150 million 5-year plan to improve mental health statewide. It's hoped that a new general psychiatry unit for Merewether and a new admissions section at James Fletcher will be built by July next year.
The changes will proceed just as fast as we can put them in place. Mental health services have been really the last cab off the rank in past years. I don't want to see that happen again.